So hello and welcome to another episode of Top 10s. I'm your host, Karl Smallwood. My shirt is covered in dinosaurs, and today we're talking about 10 pivotal moments in the history of underwear. This video is based on an original article by Radu Alexander. Links to their socials can be found below if they were provided. Where would we be without underwear? Well, probably in the same place we are now, but a lot less comfortable, that's for sure. Since the dawn of time, humans have understood the value and usefulness of undergarments, and today we're going to take a brief, nice pun, look at 10 of the key moments in the lingering history of lingerie as we explore the uncensored history of unmentionables. Number 10, the loincloth. We start at the beginning as Lewis Carroll advised us and start with the oldest, most basic form of underwear, the loincloth. It's a simple garment made out of one piece of fabric that covers the naughty bits in the front, sometimes in the back, and is wrapped around itself, maybe held up with a belt if you're feeling particularly fancy. The loincloth has been around for almost 7,000 years and remained humanity's go-to choice of undergarments for millennia due to its practicality and simplicity. Sometimes it could get more sophisticated. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs, for example, had their own intricate and valuable version of the loincloth called a shendo, but for the most part, people prefer to just wrap a piece of cloth or leather around their waist and then get on with their day. The oldest person that we're aware of to wear a loincloth is Otzi the Iceman, who was dressed in a full kilt when he died, and it survived along with him, more or less. He had a loincloth made out of narrow strips of sheep hide stitched together, which was fastened with a simple belt. Number 9, the codpiece. The men in the Middle Ages moved away from loincloths and began wearing loose-fitting trousers known as brays. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. These were comfortable, cheap and practical, but they were a bit of a palaver to put on since they were laced tight around the waist and shins. This made going to the bathroom a time-consuming affair. Enter, with earned confidence, the codpiece, a triangular flap that was attached to the pants and covered the fly, held in place by buttons or ties. Then, if anyone needed to heed the call of nature, all they had to do was undo the codpiece and leave the brays in their place. Initially, codpieces were simple and functional, but they became more intricate as time went on. Perhaps the most famous codpiece wearer in history is King Henry VIII, who proudly showed off his giant, fancy codpiece in his portrait by Hans Holbein the Younger. And if hopefully a picture of this is behind me, because it's ridiculous. It's also worth noting that King Henry VIII's armour sported similarly gigantic ornate codpieces. And of course, back then, everything the king did, everyone else emulated, so enlarged, flashy codpieces became the new style in Europe. The question still remains though, why exactly did Henry wear such a massive codpiece? Was it, as many think, simply an aggressive display of phallic virility, or was it to conceal the bandages and ointments to treat his syphilis? We will never know. All we really know though is it's very, very funny. Number 8, the chemise. Now the chemise? At the same time as the codpiece, the chemise was also in style, worn by both men and women. The chemise was a simple garment, usually made out of white linen, worn under other clothing such as gowns, robes and doublets to protect the fancier, more expensive clothes from sweat, from your balls. For most of its existence, the chemise was used as an undergarment, but then along came Marie Antoinette, who thought that with a bit of added frills and laces, it could also work as a regular dress. She even posed for a portrait by, let's give this name a go, because it's very, very French, Louise Elisabeth Gilles-Lebrun in 1783, wearing only a chemise. Marie Antoinette had long been criticised that she spent an exorbitant amount of money on clothes at a time when her people were starving. Perhaps she hoped that this portrait would make her look more like a woman of the people. But her idea backfired spectacularly. She was scorned for showing herself in public wearing a chambermaid's dustcloth, and her critics accused her of mocking the dignity of the French throne. Not to mention that she was labelled unpatriotic for wearing English cotton, whereas the Queen was expected to dress exclusively in French silks. Despite the scandal, Marie Antoinette was a trendsetter, and in the decades that followed, many women adopted this simple yet provocative fashion style. Thus, the dress became known as a chemise à la reine, or chemise of the Queen. Number 7, the corset. We now move on to the bane of women everywhere for hundreds of years, the corset. This infamous support garment was tightened in order to achieve the desirable hourglass figure, a teeny tiny waist with ample bosom and derriere. The problem was that oftentimes the corset was pulled so tight that it was more an instrument of torture than a fashion accessory. Women who had to wear constricting corsets for hours on end felt discomfort, laboured breathing and even fainted on occasion. Meanwhile, doctors accused corsets of causing everything from respiratory diseases to deformity of the ribs to damage to the internal organs, birth defects, and even, on occasion, miscarriages. And who is responsible for unleashing this painful undergarment on the world? Well, that's still up for debate, but it seems like the Greeks are to blame. The oldest depictions of corsets came from the Minoan civilization from over 3,000 years ago. Meanwhile, the oldest actual corset was made of wool and linen and recovered from a tomb on the island of Crete. Well, this garment seemingly fell out of fashion for several millennia, and it wasn't until the 16th century that the French repopularised it, and from there it spread to the rest of Europe. Number 6. The Gin and Jenny. No other type of undergarment has become more ubiquitous in modern society than a basic pair of cotton underwear, or underpants to us British folks. However, this would not have been possible 200 years ago. Cotton underwear was too time-consuming and expensive to produce in order to become the chosen unmentionables of the masses. That changed with the coming of the Industrial Revolution and the invention of two machines that allowed cotton to be manufactured on a grand scale: the cotton gin and the spinning jenny. Although cotton was not a fibre native to Europe, it soon overtook in popularity other fabrics such as silk and wool. Meanwhile, in America, cotton became the backbone of the country's economy, becoming the main export during the first half of the 19th century. Of course, the reason why this fibre was so profitable for America was because it was grown and collected using slave labour, so knock some points off for that, I suppose. Number 5, the bloomers. Now, we've already mentioned the corset, but there came a day during the mid-19th century when women said enough is enough and decided that it was time to wear something practical and comfortable, and damn everybody who had a problem with it, and that's where the bloomers came in. Inspired by Turkish trousers, bloomers were long, baggy pantaloons that were worn underneath dresses. These popular undergarments were named for famed women's rights activist Amelia Bloomer, who heavily campaigned in their favour, although we guess she may have preferred to have been remembered for other achievements, such as launching The Lily, the first newspaper in America owned and edited by women. Many were shocked by this new fashion development, which was such a marked 180 from the previous styles, but it caught on regardless. As the decades passed, bloomers started getting shorter until they evolved into a form of baggy, comfortable underwear for women. Number 4, the union suit. Around the same time as bloomers came to be, women also tried out a new type of underwear which was more comfortable and relaxing than anything else they'd had in their day. They even called this new type of underwear emancipation suits, although they would later become known better as union suits. If you're still not sure what we're talking about, they are one-piece long underwear with butt flaps. You know, the butt flaps! Why don't things have butt flaps anymore? In the middle of winter, it gets chilly when you go to the bathroom. We don't all have heated seats. Bring back butt flaps. Initially, they were intended solely for women, but everybody thought they were such a good idea because butt flap, and as such soon became unisex, worn by women, men, children. You know, anyone who needed a butt flap. Soon enough, though, they became strongly associated only with working class men. However, they were admittedly a little tricky to get into, so long johns came along and supplanted them as the commonly worn undergarment of the working man. Although long johns served the same basic purpose, they came in two pieces, making them much easier to get on. However, they did have a downside: no butt flap. Number 3, the jockstrap. Nowadays, the jockstrap can be an athlete's best friend, but it wasn't always designed for them. In fact, the jockstrap was invented in 1874 by a sporting goods company in Chicago and was initially known as the jockey strap. That's because it was intended for bicycle jockeys who had to pedal for hours on end on hard cobblestone streets every single day and needed something extra to protect, the old organic chandelier. Other workmen soon saw the usefulness of the jockstrap, especially when a hard cup was added to it, and it became yet another form of underwear popular with the working class. Even doctors found it quite helpful for medical purposes and began recommending the jockstrap to men recovering from surgeries or injuries such as hernias. And yes, in case you're wondering, there is a female version. It's known as a Jill strap. I actually didn't know that. That's kind of neat. Number 2, the bra. One evening in 1914, New York socialite Caressa Crosby was getting ready to go to a debutante ball. As was standard at the time, she first put on a whalebone corset before donning her gown. It was stiff and constricting, but hey, what can you do? By that point, Crosby had gotten used to the tightness of corsets, but she didn't like that it was pricking out from under her dress. Struck by a bolt of inspiration, she took off her corset and asked her maid to bring her 2 handkerchiefs, a pink ribbon and a sewing kit. Crosby was the talk of the town at the party that evening. Most of the other women were shocked, if not outright amazed, that she could move around so freely while they all lumbered around stiffly. When other people asked to buy a bra for themselves, Crosby realised that she was onto something, so she patented the backless brassiere and started a business. Then World War I came along and made the bra even more popular. Women started taking up industrial construction jobs, which you couldn't really do in a corset. Plus, in 1917, the US Industries Board straight up asked women to stop buying corsets so they could ration the metal for the war effort. Contrary to a popular and enduring myth, the bra was not invented by a man, and his name was certainly not Otto Titzling. That whole thing was made up by New Zealand humorist Wallace Rayburn in 1971, the same guy who made everyone think that Thomas Crapper invented the flush toilet. For whatever reason, people kept believing his satire and then perpetuated it as fact. Number 1. Going commando. So now we've talked about all the different undergarments that people have worn throughout history, but what if you do not want to wear anything under your outer clothes and instead prefer to go commando? Surely it would be impossible to know as the first person in history who decided to go free and easy and ditch their skivvies. But what about the actual saying? Why would not wearing any underwear be called going commando? And did any commandos actually do this? Well, to that second part, yes, but the origins of the expression are a bit murkier. The most popular hypothesis claims that it became a slang term during the 1970s, thanks to American soldiers returning from Vietnam. During the war, special forces spent a lot of time in the hot, dense, wet jungles of Vietnam, and wearing tight underwear left them particularly vulnerable to a dreaded fungal infection known quite aptly as crotch rot. And we have a disclaimer here, do not Google that. So off came the underpants to improve ventilation. Another origin story is even more unpleasant than that, believe it or not, and it says that commandos ditched their underwear when they had diarrhea and cut off the seams of their fatigues so they could go on the go, as it were. Nobody can say with any certainty whether or not either of these things is true, but most seem to agree that the expression permanently entered the public consciousness thanks to an episode of Friends from 1996.
Maybe if I wasn't going commando.
So at least we know that for sure. So interesting as well that Friends also popularised the term friend zone as well. So I guess that show's got two phrases that it helped introduce the public lexicon. So I hope everyone watching enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed hosting it, and as mentioned at the start, I'm your host, Karl Smallwood. This video is based on an original article by one Radu Alexander. If they provide us social links to us, they will be linked below alongside my own. If you like this video, leave a like. If you've got anything to say about it, leave a comment. And if you want to see more videos like this, why not comment? I also host for the sister channels, the Top10s, Biographics and Geographics, also linked somewhere on screen or at the end on the end slide, and I have my own channel, Facting with Karl Smallwood, as well as Wiki Weekends, which has an altogether more casual tone than this one, where I drink beer instead of water, coffee and tea. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have the day you all deserve. Cheers. There's no water left because I was thirsty, but pretend I'm drinking.